Venture X card from Capital One gives you premium travel benefits, perfect for seeing Taylor Swift The Eras Tour. Presented by Capital One. Ooh, I do love her. Earn 5 times miles on flights and 10 times miles on hotels through Capital One Travel.
Enjoy your stay in Suite 13.
Whoa, 13? That's Taylor's lucky number. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 41 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Digital Federal Credit Union, but they're better known to all of us by now as just DCU. And not only is DCU a great place to do your banking at, but they are also a great place to work. And right now, they are hiring for full and part-time positions. And I know it may be a really unique time to try and visualize yourself at a new job. Trust me, I get it. But at DCU, they're here to help you make the change, along with offering a benefits package that includes, check this out, 3 weeks vacation, a competitive salary, a generous bonus program, 401k plan with 100% company match up to 7%, plus tuition reimbursement, a student loan payment assistance program, and so much more. So to learn more about DCU and their career opportunities, visit dcu.org/careers. DCU is proud to be an equal employment opportunity and affirmative action employer. This episode of the podcast is also sponsored by MistressCarrie.com. It's the one place you can go to find every episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast. Every situation report that comes out Monday through Friday that gives you all of your rock news, music headlines, and industry info in less than 5 minutes. Every after action report, which features every guest on Cocktails in the War Room, which is my video show, which is live on my Facebook page every Tuesday night at 8:30. All 123 episodes are up there. Plus, you can find my blog, my photo galleries, the events calendar that is full of bands' live stream concert info, all of the links to get a hold of me, and of course, the Mistress Carrie online store. Just log on to MistressCarrie.com. Okay, I could not wait for episode 41 of the podcast. Alice Cooper is a legend. He is the first, but not the last, inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on the podcast. And he is also my first guest that appeared on the original Muppet Show. And you know I asked Alice Cooper about that. We talked about his new album, Detroit Stories, his band, or should I say bands. He told me some great stories about the Hollywood vampires, the new version and the old version. We talked about how he balances his career, and he even gave me marriage advice. Yep, that's right. I got marriage advice from Alice Cooper. And we talked a lot about music and radio. I mean, he is a DJ after all. I think you are going to love this episode. So let's get it started. Allow me to introduce you to the one and only Alice Cooper.
Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mistress Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie. Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Hello?
Hey, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Great. I'm in Arizona. It was 85 degrees today.
I'm in Boston. It was not.
I know. I try to rub it into everybody that's not in Arizona.
Trust me, it almost was 50, and it was shockingly warm.
I know, 50, we would die at 50.
It's a pleasure to meet you in person. I've only ever spoken to you on the phone, so it's nice to see you. Congratulations on the new album.
Thank you. Yeah, it was it was what we were going after. We wanted to make a real hard rock album. We didn't understand that it was going to actually turn into this till we got to Detroit and started using all Detroit players and, writing all the songs in Detroit. And then we kind of captured all the flavors of Detroit musically, especially using, guys like, Wayne Kramer on guitar and, and Johnny B on drums and Mark, we kind of surrounded ourselves with the best Detroit players, and everything was live in the studio. It was great.
You and I are both from cities that within 5 minutes of meeting us, you know where we're from, because Detroit, Boston, Chicago, New York, there seems to be something about those cities that when you're from there, it's part of your soul and you want to tell everyone about it.
You're right. And Detroit was literally the butt of the joke for so long. It was the murder capital for a while. It was the mayor got caught smoking crack and got reelected. Okay. So that kind of gives you an idea of Detroit, but it was the only place where the Alice Cooper band fit in. We didn't fit into LA. We didn't fit into San Francisco or New York, or Boston had Aerosmith, and Jay Giles and bands like that. But Alice fit right into Detroit with the Stooges and the MC5. And these bands were all inherently theatrical. They had their own sort of brand of theater. And that was exactly what we were, in your face rock and roll,
What are people missing about Detroit besides obviously the music? All I know about Detroit is the era of bands you're talking about, Motown and Cars.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I think most people work in factories. They work in the Ford factories, or at least that was the nucleus of the place, or Chrysler or Chevy. And they kind of wanted their bands to sound like the big machines. I think that has something to do with it. And it's not really a sophisticated area. It's not, it's more like no BS kind of rock and roll. A band, soft bands just don't go over there. You have to be a band with attitude. Aerosmith would have done great in Detroit because they were like a Detroit rock and roll band. They were exactly what Detroit was. So, if you would have told me that Aerosmith was from Detroit, I would have gone, yeah, I get it, But all the bands, we felt at home there because we fit right in with those guys. And I had never heard of the Stooges or the MC5 when I first went there, and then I saw them and I went, oh my gosh, look at these guys. This is really something. This is this whole city. Seeger, Ted Nugent, Susie Quattro, Brownsville Station, every band was really something to hear.
And so you decided to have this album kind of evolve into a badass love letter kind of to your city.
Yeah. I'm one, like what you said before, when people say, where are you from? I say Detroit. And there's a whole respect there in the music thing about Detroit. There's something about that that's, ground. It's right on the ground. And I think that's the same thing, though, with Boston. I know a lot of Boston bands, and when they say they're from Boston, oh, yeah, that's respect. You get that,
And people either understand it or they don't. And if they don't get it, they just think you're a jerk.
Yeah, well, either that or they, you just kind of bring up, by the way, did you know who came from here? And then you read the list, and that's pretty impressive, But, the thing I loved about Detroit was the fact that Motown and rock and roll coexisted very well together. We would be up on stage, it would be us and the Stooges and the Who, and you'd look down in the audience and there would be Smokey Robinson, and there would be one of the Supremes, and there would be Stevie Wonder, and there'd be, all these Motown bands would come down and see the rock bands because it was just music. There was no color thing involved. we would go see a soul review and we fit right in. Nobody looked at long-haired white guys and went, hey, what are you doing here? They would just go, yeah, it's music.
It used to be for music fans that your favorite artist or the bands you listened to defined you. It was a uniform you wore. And it's so funny to hear the artists talk about behind the scenes that they were all hanging out together, even though the fan bases could be so separated based on the badge of honor you wore with your favorite artist.
That's right. If you were a Stooges fan, then you weren't probably a big MC5 fan, or but in Detroit, everybody was kind of live and let live. The bands, after every show there was a party. Either the party was at the Amboy Duke's house, or it was at our house, or Susie Quattro's, or whatever. But that was every single week. There was never no such thing as no party. That would be unheard of, And everybody was kind of, promoting everybody else. I was proud of the Stooges. I was proud of the Bob Seger because they were from Detroit. So I promoted them. It wasn't a competition where we were at each other's throats at all, in the least bit. But that's Midwest. That's a Midwest kind of family thing.
Did you ever see Iggy Pop with a T-shirt on? Ever?
No, I never did. I don't think I ever saw Iggy when he wasn't shirtless. And I made the big mistake one time. He said, hey, you're going to Germany. Could you pick me up a switchblade? And I went, yeah. I picked him a stiletto. Of course, he gets on stage and starts cutting himself with it. And we ended up wrapping him up in a blanket and taking him to the hospital. I said, give me that. You hurt yourself.
What's the craziest party that you found yourself in where you turn around and just this diverse group of people and you're like, what am I doing here?
Well, it wasn't exactly that. There was a party in the wintertime, and I can't remember whose house it was, where I woke up at 4 a.m. and everybody in the party was asleep. Everybody was out. And I woke up and I looked around and I went, what happened? Did everybody die? And everybody maybe OD'd a little bit that night. And I walked outside with just a T-shirt on to walk around in the snow just to get my brain back together. And by the time I got back, people were waking up and I have no idea what happened. I don't know how everybody passed out at the same time.
You were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And every time the nominations come out, there's a huge uproar, especially in the hard rock and metal community, that the community feels disrespected and underrepresented. And there's the argument between screw the Rock Hall, it doesn't mean anything, we don't want to be part of your club, and something that I read from Dee Snider recently that was like, no, the hell with that, I want them to have to deal with us.
Yeah, well, I think everybody that's like a Dee Snider who deserves it. Dee was not just a lead singer. He was, he did some politics there, and he was also a spokesman, and he was just an all around great guy. Twisted Sister didn't sell a gigantic amount of records. They didn't even make that many records, but they were effective. And that part of the Hall of Fame is how much did you affect rock and roll? That's why bands, that were not really like Tom Waits. How many records did Tom Waits sell? Well, I went in with him, and I really respect Tom Waits. I didn't respect how many albums he sold. I respected what he brought to rock and roll. So that's kind of what they really go on. But there's people, to me, where I can't understand Burt Bacharach's not in the Hall of Fame. He wrote as many hits as the Beatles. I can't understand why. A lot of my people did get in. Paul Butterfield got in, and Laura Nyro got in, and people like that I thought were way on the back burner, but were really giants in what they were doing. So yeah, I think Iron Maiden belongs in. I believe Judas Priest belongs in. Bands that I cannot believe that they've overlooked. But there's a nominating committee, there's a voting thing, and I know who I voted for. I voted for the ones that I thought were most deserving to get in there. Not how many records they sold or how popular they were, but how much they contributed something new to rock and roll or something really valid.
I read an article recently that Bob Seger, who you talked about earlier, was surprised that you covered him on this record.
Well, he was surprised I covered that song.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that it was that song out of everything.
I mean, he had so many hits, and that's exactly what we didn't want. We didn't want to cover an MC5 song that was a hit. We wanted to cover an MC5 song that was an album cut, but it fit what we were doing. I heard Sister Ann, and I went, oh man, that's us. We can nail this song. We're just going to do this live in the studio with, Bonamassa and Steve Hunter and Johnny B. I mean, this band is going to kill this song, and I'll play harp on it. That'll be great. I finally get to play harp on a song. But same thing with, with Bob. He said, why would you choose East Side Story? I said, because I was from East Detroit. I said, and it's a good story. I said, this song needs a shot of adrenaline, and let us Cooperize it and put it into a story form that will really come alive. And he just said, wow, that's amazing. I never thought anybody would ever cover that song.
One of the things you also did with this record is you worked with Bob Ezrin again.
Well, yeah, last 4 albums have been with Bob.
Yeah. And it's been a long-standing relationship. Can you just talk about the importance of the producer in making a record and why he works so well with you and you with him?
Well, first of all, for all you young bands out there, when you're getting a producer, trust me, you don't know more than him. Okay. Why do you have a producer? Because he's going to take your music and put it into a form that can be listenable and something that can actually maybe get on the radio. That's why he's a producer. Bob Ezrin did exactly that with us. He did what George Martin did with the Beatles. He took a band that had all these good ideas and good songs, but we didn't know how to put them on record and make them viable. How 18 was 20 minutes long. He took it down to 3 minutes and kept saying, dumb it down. Just keep dumbing it down. And when we got at the dumbest form of it, it was powerful then. Then it was powerful because the guy's going, I'm 18 and I like it. That was the message. And you couldn't say that with Bohemian Rhapsody. You had to say it like just as, it just gut, and that song was powerful because it was simple, that's what we had to learn. And we did not have a sound. It was sort of like Bob said, look, when you hear the Doors, why do you know it's the Doors? Jim Morrison has a sound. Robbie Krieger has a sound. Ray Manzarek has a sound. Why do you know it's the Rolling Stones? Mick Jagger's got a sound. Keith Richards got a. He said, what you guys have is a lot of great ideas and a great show and a great characters, but you could be the Strawberry Alarm Clock when I hear it on the radio. Because there's no identification with you. So what we did for 6-7 months was nothing but worked on that sound. And Bob ended up, but then when you heard Love It to Death, you finally went, oh, that's Alice Cooper. That was the real hard part of doing it. It was creating Alice Cooper. What does Dennis's bass sound like? What does Neil's drums sound like? What does Alice's voice sound like? Then you put it all together and stay consistent on that album with that. And now you have a sound. There was now an identification.
You brought it up a few times. And because I come from a radio background, the way technology is changing so much and the way that radio as a business has changed so much, the fact that now you're also a radio host, talk about the importance, especially with rock music, that radio plays into that.
Okay, well, I all my life I've listened to the radio, and I totally understand how it's a business. Okay, I understand that, but you can't leave the fun out of it. You can't let rock and roll just be these 40 songs. So when I took the radio show, it was with Dick Clark. Dick said, if you had a show, what would it be? I said, I would take it back to 1970 and let the DJ pick the songs. And I would let the DJ talk about things. Now, the thing I had was I knew all the backstage stories. Who doesn't want to hear that? The stories you're never going to hear except for a guy that was there. The Lost Weekend, I was the bartender, so all the stories, which ones you can tell, which ones that you can't tell. And then there's a million stories about each guy. I mean, well, there's a million stories about Keith Moon alone, But I also I'll play Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, and Van Halen. And, of course, those are the bands that are going to get played a lot. But I'm going to play Butterfield. I'm going to play Love. I'm going to play Them. I'm going to play all these bands that never do get their radio time. Procol Harum, there's so many good bands out there that don't get their time. You couldn't have Led Zeppelin without the Yardbirds. I play as many of the Yardbirds as I do Led Zeppelin. And people go, wow, I love that Zeppelin song. And I go, that was the Yardbirds. You see and you can see where Led Zeppelin came from the Yardbirds, And so I do a little education on it. I let them know, who's who and why.
And you have to love it, right? To be on the radio with rock music, it has to be part of your soul.
Oh, if I was driving down the street and I heard Happenings 10 years time ago by the Yardbirds, I'd go, oh, what? What? Are you kidding me? Or if I heard Stephanie Knows Who by Love, or 7+7 Is, or any of those, right next to AC/DC and these great, radio bands, I would go, man, I'm listening to that radio station because they're going to give me a surprise every once in a while. Maybe a little Frank Zappa here and a little bit of this here that, and I find that since I've been doing this, the stations that we're on around the world, their ratings go like that because we're unique to a computer picking what's going to be played.
All of the stories that you're talking about, the 10,000 different Keith Moon stories, is there ever going to come a time when all the stories come out? Do the names, the names change to protect the innocent kind of thing? Or are we better off not knowing? Because I think for a lot of younger people, they have such a hard time imagining a world where everything isn't documented.
Yes.
And there's all those stories that are kind of out there somewhere.
Well, and and I think kids love the mythology of, and I think everybody loves the mythology of what happened in the 60s and 70s. It was an insane period of time. When I pick out Keith Moon, it's only because I could tell you 100 stories, and Harry Nilsson could tell you 100 more, and Ringo could tell you 100 different ones because he was that crazy. And he was the best drummer of all time. I consider him the best stage drummer ever. Keith Moon, he was doing things that other drummers couldn't even think about doing. And he was Keith Moon, but he was certifiably insane in a really sweet way. He was the nicest person in the world, but it was like he'd wear you out. In 2 hours, you'd be worn out hanging with him because it was just, it was like, I always wanted to say, does anybody have any Ritalin for Keith?
To be successful in rock and roll, do you have to kind of ride that line of genius and insanity to be the legendary rock star like that?
It was the great thing about that era. People wanted us to be that. And we were glad to be that for them. They wanted their rock stars to be notorious. They wanted their rock stars to be mysterious. They wanted their rock stars to be in trouble. They wanted their rock stars to survive. They, this happened to him. Yeah, but did you hear the new record? Oh my gosh, he survived that. And they wanted their rock stars to be consistent. When you heard a Beatles album, you went, oh my gosh, it's better than the last one. How is that possible? You hear the Rolling Stones, you go, geez, 60 years later, they're still rocking as hard and playing as better than they ever have. I think people feel secure. If I say to myself to in those days when I was in high school, you couldn't be a Cream fan and a Hendrix fan. You had to pick one. So I was a Hendrix fan, and you would sit there at lunch and argue about who was better. Well, yeah, but Jimmy plays better than Clapton. Well, no, Clapton's more classical than Jimmy. But that was great. Look what you're talking about. You're talking about music that you connect to. Everybody loved the Beatles. That was easy. But then when you got with the Yardbirds and you got with the Who and you got with the Kinks and you got with them and the Pretty Things and all these bands, you really had to kind of pick the band that really affected you. We were a Yardbirds band.
Can you talk about the relationship between rock artists and the fans? Because obviously in the last year, we haven't been able to get together in that place that is kind of all of our church, that place where we all belong. And everyone misses it so much. But it seems like with a lot of other genres of music, it's not quite as powerful of a relationship between artist and fan.
Yeah, there's a tribal thing about it that, here's you listen to these albums, and you get to hear this band once a year, maybe they come in town. So it's an event. When Alice Cooper's show comes in, it's like Cirque du Soleil, and you go, I can't miss the show because what's he going to do this time? What songs is he going to play? What? And I'm the same way. If the Who come into town, or if the Stones come into town, it doesn't matter who it is. If it's somebody I really like, I go, I can't wait to see the show, because I want to see what they're doing now. I want to see what AC/DC is doing now. Oh, wow, that's cool. Guns N' Roses, whatever. We're a big fraternity and a very creative fraternity. And I think that the audience, they want you to be bigger than life. They want you to be that thing that they're not. And, when they do meet us and they realize that we're pretty nice guys and pretty average, but I don't play me on stage. I play Alice. Now, Alice is my favorite rock star because he's in the third person. I put his face on his body and I go up and I play that character. And I really enjoy playing that character. He's really my favorite guy. But when the curtains come down, I leave him up there. I don't want to be him all the time. That would be awful. That would be horrible. McCartney's different. McCartney is McCartney all the time. He is the nicest guy out there. He plays the greatest music. His band is perfect. Mick Jagger all the time. But they're not fictitious characters like myself or Bowie. We created fictitious characters.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about somebody like Bowie or somebody like you. In order to have longevity at all of career with that being such an immersive experience for you, you would have to leave Alice on stage to survive as you, right?
Absolutely. There was a period of time when I would leave, when I was just getting that notoriety, and I went, wow, I'm going to go to this club tonight. Do I have to put makeup on? Do I have to carry a snake? Do I have to be, I don't want to let anybody down, and I finally got to the point I couldn't really exist like that anymore. When I got sober, I realized that I was going to separate the two. We were going to have a great relationship because we weren't going to be the same person. I was going to be the guy that I could go shopping. I could go to the movies. I could go, I could go play golf if I wanted to, like that. But that night, when you go to see Alice Cooper, you're going to see Alice Cooper full out. I mean, you're going to see this character in absolute Alice. And to me, that was the most fun part of the night. Looking forward to that, to playing that character. And you always surround yourself with the best players, and not just the best players, but people you really like. Like my band, my touring band right now, they are the best of the best. And they're also best friends. There's never ego trips backstage. There's never somebody complaining about, I didn't get enough solo, or I didn't get enough light on me tonight, and all that crap, Same thing with the Vampires. The Vampires, we've been together 7 years now. There's never been one argument in that band. I've never heard Johnny or Joe or myself ever raise our voice to anybody.
Which is amazing because you're all such huge personalities and so successful in your own right.
We respect each other. I respect Johnny. Of course, he's a great actor and he's really great and he's fun. And I've seen all his movies, but I see him as a guitar player and he can play. He just did an album with Jeff Beck. Anybody that thinks he's a movie star trying to be a rock star is totally wrong on that. He's a much better rock star. And it's in him. He was a guitar player way before he was an actor. So when he steps on stage with Joe Perry, he can trade leads with Joe. And Joe sits there and goes, yeah, he's good, and I can totally trust Johnny to take any lead up there, But like I said, we all respect each other so much that nobody would ever argue. It would just be kind of so uncool. to argue with the other. We would rather just say, okay, let's try that. And we try it in rehearsal and go, that doesn't work. Okay, let's go on the next idea. But nobody goes, oh, never use my ideas. You know, that's what bands are like. But both of my bands are like best friends. And that makes touring so easy.
Have you been offered a like a Vegas residency or something? Because I feel like the theatrics of everything that you do, they had to have already made you the offer. I mean, the Aerosmith got the offer.
And I think that will eventually happen. You know, that will happen because I would love to go into it like a hotel and have my own theater where I could, if we had our own theater that didn't have to move every night.
Well, that's why I was asking, because then you could permanently install things.
Absolutely. You could affect every sense. You could have smell. You could have things coming down where people get touched by things. You could get, you know, a total sensory show and rig the whole show up. The hell's a poppin', you know, where certain people have shockers in their seats, things like that. I mean, it would be so much fun to do that. Do Welcome to My Nightmare, but really make it a nightmare. Have people, once they get in, make sure that everybody knows the doors are locked and they can't get out.
A lot of the artists like doing them because it allows them to have some semblance of normalcy in a life. And I'm going to ask you this question. I just got married last year, and you've had thank you. And you've had a very long and successful marriage. And is it because you've been able to separate those things that you leave Alice where you leave them and you are allowed to have a life?
Yeah, it's Cheryl was 18 when she joined the Welcome to My Nightmare show. She was a prima ballerina.
I can't believe I'm asking for marriage advice from Alice Cooper, by the way.
But I can tell you some really good things that I've learned. Okay, first of all, if you watch American sitcoms, it's always the woman and the man pitting against each other. Who's going to get the upper hand? Who's going to fool the other one? Who's going to trick the other one into doing what they wanted to do? That's a horrible recipe for marriage. You do what you do best. Let's say you do the finances because you're really good at that. And your husband is really good at doing this and that and this. Everybody does what they do well. And then you meet in the middle. My wife says marriage is not 100 or not 50%, 50. It's 100%, 100%. Which is very smart. She says marriage is two dysfunctional people that totally refuse to give up on each other. That's such a great, it's
perfect.
I mean, I would never give up on her. She'd never give up on me. We've never cheated on each other. I date her. I whisk her away to cheap motels sometimes in the afternoon, because romance is incredibly important. And the most important thing is never marry the person you love. Marry the person you're in love with. That means they're in love with you. And you would never do anything to hurt each other. You would never cheat because it would hurt the other person. You couldn't imagine hurting that person. So if you marry the person you're in love with, you're going to have a happy marriage. You'll have bumps and you'll work it out. But you wouldn't do anything to hurt that person.
With everything that's happened over the last year, all of the stresses, the nervousness. I know that you've talked about being able to be vaccinated. And how has that lowered the stress level, not only for you, but your wife and all of your loved ones?
So, my wife and I had it at the same time. We both had COVID at the same time. We were out for a month. We were here. At least we had it at the same time. We could commiserate in Arizona, which is not a bad place to be. Except that it really does wear you out. It wears you down. It's one of those things where you do feel like you're every day is another day. But when it goes away, okay, you're done with it now. Everybody has it on different levels. My kids had it for 3 days and done. And Cheryl and I had it for a month. But I still said, I'm full of antibodies right now, but I want the shot, and I want the second shot. I don't want to give this thing a chance to get back. If we all did that, there'd be concerts again.
Can't wait for them.
Why wouldn't you go to a concert if the enemy isn't there? I think we'll get back to having the big concerts again because we've eradicated this thing. But I think, I just talked to England the other day. They said they had inoculated 20 million people already. And I know in Phoenix here, we're doing 10, 20,000 people a day. So I think in 6 months, we're going to be on tour.
I hope so. I have one more question for you because I know you have to run. You are the first person I've had on the show that can talk about this experience. I am a diehard, lifelong Muppets fan, and you were on that show. Can you just please tell me what that experience was like and what Jim Henson was like? Because especially now with Disney Plus, where people can watch all the old episodes now.
It was the most fun thing I ever did. First of all, you spend a week in London. We shot it in London. And you're working, again, with Henson and Frank Oz and all the originals. The amazing thing is this, is like I sat there when they offered it to me. It was the #1 show in the world. Okay. And I had just established myself as America's villain, ghoul kind of character. And I went, oh man, I want to do this show, but I don't want to water down Alice Cooper, the character. And I said, who was on the show recently? They said, Christopher Lee, Vincent Price. And I went, I'm in. Because if those two guys can be on that show, I can be on that show. I don't measure up to them. So doing the show, after about 3 days of rehearsal, you are talking to the Muppets like they're people. And you don't even realize it. I'm telling Miss Piggy, hey, it would be a great idea if you put your head on my shoulder during this thing. Oh, good idea. Yeah, that's great. We'll do that. And you're literally talking to them and they're responding. Kermit would stick his head in my dressing room. Everything okay in here? I go, yeah, Kermit. Yeah, great. I've got everything I need. Okay. All right. Boom. And you're buying into it. You totally buy into the world of the Muppets. Because when they're doing rehearsals and all this, they keep it going. They keep it going through the whole thing. And I honestly had the most fun ever doing that show. And on my birthday, every birthday, I get a little porcelain Muppet. And that was from 1978, 77. I still get the porcelain Muppets.
Oh, you're making my day right now because that's my childhood. And they are real to me. And that show is so amazing.
So well written. It was so well written. Very, very funny. Kids could love it, but it was adult humor. Of course, I played the Faust character, trying to get Kermit to sell his soul. It was hysterical. I mean, the writing was terrific on it. And we were, spent most of our time laughing, just trying to keep a straight face while we were doing this, So, yeah, I'm a huge Muppet fan. And I was so glad to see it's back on. To me, I just went, oh, this is great.
Alice, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to see you and to catch up with you. Congratulations on the new album. And just thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. And say hi to Boston for me. You may thaw out at some point.
We'll say hello, but we would much rather do it in person. So we can't wait for you to get back on the road.
Every band I know is like a racehorse at the starting gate. We cannot wait to get back on the road. Every band is sitting there going, now?
Well, we miss you. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, really? That was freaking Alice Cooper. The corresponding playlist to this episode totally rocks. And it's linked in the show notes of the episode, along with all of the ways that you can get a hold of Alice Cooper, details on the new album Detroit Stories, and all of my links as well. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast so you don't miss anything. New full-length episodes every Wednesday. Plus, you get the Situation Report. Monday through Friday, all of your rock news, music headlines, and industry info in less than 5 minutes. And if you don't mind, give me a 5-star review and leave a comment so I know what you thought. Huge thanks once again to our sponsors, Digital Federal Credit Union. Don't forget, they're hiring. Go to dcu.org/careers to get info. And of course, mistresscarrie.com. Join me live every Tuesday night at 8:30, live on my Facebook page for Cocktails in the War Room. The Mistress Carrie podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Do you think if I asked Alice Cooper really nicely, he would let me see or maybe even touch his collection of Muppet figurines? Okay, I just made that totally awkward.
Venture X from Capital One is the travel card for people always asking,
where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
By now, you know that sound. It's the sound of the Home Depot. But what about that sound? You're listening to a set of GE appliances, complete with all you need to keep food fresh, dishes clean, and everything else stress-free. Making this the sound of savings on top brand appliances. The Home Depot. How doers get more done. Get up to 25% off select GE appliances right now. Offer valid January 5th through January 25th, 2023. U.S. only. See store or online for details.